Hey, welcome to Discovering More at Peace Church, where we kind of talk about some of the things that came up during the sermons or the messages that are rolling around our brains a little bit too. So this past week we talked about listening to God and making space for prayer, because it can be hard. It can be hard to find space. Our schedules are jam-packed with events and activities, and it's like information overload. I don't know about you, but like you get notifications on your phone, and it's like you got the news, you got your emails, you got people wanting to connect, you got companies that want to sell you their products. And yesterday actually I was at something and my phone vibrated, and it's like, oh, maybe my wife is calling me or something. And so then I didn't pull my phone out, but I noticed even my own distraction from the moment, from being present in the moment.
Yeah.
And then I pulled my phone out at a time when things were a little, less, meaningful or whatever. And it was just a spam call. And I was like, why did I waste this energy and this thought, like, over a spam call?
Yeah.
So I feel like today it's hard for us to make space.
Yeah. I'm laughing because just in the last, I think, half hour to 45 minutes, I'm in my office and I know my phone went off like 5 times. And 2 of them were spam, and the other 3 were just little conversations going back and forth with people or with a group that I didn't really have any concern about. Yeah. But they're doing the group chat kind of thing. I was like, why'd they even take the time to look at this thing? But I find in my stage of life, I'm not quite as busy like that as a lot of people are, which is a blessing. But what rolled through my mind, though, is just the struggle with silence. And I think it's partly because we're so busy that we feel guilty sometimes to just take the time. Yeah. I think I should be doing something, right? And I know for me, I've struggled with silence as a spiritual discipline. And I've been working at it for quite a long time to get more comfortable with it. Yeah. Because you got to be quiet if you want to hear. If you really want to feel like you hear from God, you need to actually get rid of that stuff. Which there are a number of reasons that make it difficult. One is we're busy, but I think also we tend to struggle with silence.
What have been some of the things that have helped you in your quest to be comfortable in the silence?
Well, first I had to realize it. Yeah. And I realized that I was a guy that if I came home from, for lunch or whatever, the first thing I would do is I'd turn on the radio or the TV. I just felt like I realized I was just constantly filling myself with noise. And so I had to realize it first. And I just had to start making time for it. Honestly, one of my practices I first started with was whenever I would be driving alone for any length of time, I turned the radio off and started with that, and stopped turning the radio on or the TV on when I would go home for lunch and eat lunch without that, so little things like that. Yeah. But then I progressed to say, well, the silence is supposed to be for spiritual good, and so I would, rather than pray, I would just say, I think about what's bothering me, what's bothering right now, or what I'm concerned about, and my prayer would be, God, speak to me about. Well, that was when my kids were teenagers, actually, when I first started experimenting. Talk to me about how I should be dealing with my kids. What can I be doing to be a better father with my teenage kids? And then try to be quiet. And it was amazing sometimes the thoughts that would come through my mind that I can't say for sure were God speaking to me, but they were good ideas, good thoughts. And so I'm going to say, yes, God was speaking to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think one of the things we don't recognize about ourselves is we're actually really good at paying attention as people. And the temptation to be distracted is really because we have so much attention. Yeah. And I forget who it was, but the quote was basically, no one is comfortable sitting with themselves in the silence of their own hearts. If you want to make anyone uncomfortable, just have them sit with themselves in the silence of their own hearts. And I think it's true. We're looking for things to keep us from paying attention to what's going on inside of ourselves. We're actually really good at paying attention. We're trying to balance 16 different things at once. What if we cut it down to one? And I think one of the helpful things for me is, as we approach prayer and we approach silence in prayer, oftentimes we start beating ourselves up when distractions come.
Yes.
Like, why can't I keep this stuff away? But when we start to see the work of approaching those things and then releasing them as an act of prayer as well.
Yeah.
And maybe we only end up with a couple minutes of true silence, of true rest and peace, and like being present with ourselves and with God. But the work of getting to that is also part of the prayer.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. Yeah, and so maybe it is actually that thing that's distracting us that needs to be given in prayer, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a reason that is overriding that time that I want to be quiet. So maybe that's the prayer. God, what is it about this that I need to hear from you on to help me to have it be less of a distraction?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as we looked at Samuel this past week, one of the things that I remarked on was how his faithfulness and just how he lived out his life in service where he was, that becomes part of our prayer life too. So even as we start to orient ourselves toward our actions, as we orient ourselves toward our work, we can get so caught up in like, I didn't spend 15 minutes in prayer, or I didn't do a prayer journal, or I didn't do whatever. It's like, well, let's take a more broad approach to prayer. And let's see our lives as an act of prayer. It says pray continually. How can we pray continually if not praying in the moments where we're faithfully following our boss, or joining with our coworkers in a meaningful work, whatever that might be? That becomes part of our prayer life too. Parenting our children, reaching out to our grandkids, whatever it might be, that becomes part of our prayer life if we're seeing that as an act of faithfulness to God.
Yeah, I appreciate how you talked about Samuel just being attentive to
Eli.
Eli, thank you. I know that. Eli, just being attentive to him and learning that attention and how that then translated to his attention to God. I just appreciated that connection that you made. And and then just the idea of hearing that sometimes I think we get those nudges from God in the midst of being faithful. But we're so busy doing that we need to say, I'll think about that later.
Yeah.
But maybe then being able to say, okay, wait a second. I feel like there's something going on here, a spiritual thing going on here between me and God. I need to think about that for a moment. You don't have to spend 15 minutes of quiet time with it necessarily, but to acknowledge and say, okay, what does it mean? What does that mean for me for today?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and another thing about Eli that really astounded me as I read through this, because it's so much about Samuel. This whole like Samuel hears the voice of God. God's like, Samuel, Samuel. Eli is the one who instructs Samuel how to pray.
Yeah.
And Eli's a flawed man. The prophecies against Eli, it's not good for him. But even in the midst of all that, he can still teach Samuel to listen and to pray and to respond properly to God. So a takeaway for us as Christians, no matter how long you've been a Christian, whatever the case, there's probably somebody that you could teach to pray. And we need help. We need instruction on how to pray. So taking the time even to watch these videos and say, okay, well, how can I find that silence then for myself? How can I begin to sit and begin to turn my attention more to God? And maybe even maybe learn from Eli as well. Eli's instruction was this: speak, Lord, for your servant listens. Make that your prayer. Just really focus on those words right there and let go of everything else. Speak, Lord, for your servant listens, and see what comes to mind. Just take the time, find the silence, find 3 minutes to sit and shut your phone off, whatever it might be, and sit, just try. If you can't do more than 3 minutes, start with 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's just a great prayer. I love how you just focus in on that. Speak, Lord, I'm listening. And to see, you'd be amazed sometimes what you might feel in your heart that God is moving. Yeah,
for me, when I sit to pray, oftentimes the things that come to mind are my to-do list. I don't know about you. I'm sure we all have our own challenges, but for me, it's my to-do list. So one of the things that I'll do sometimes is have a piece of paper ready to write down all those to-do lists that I do need to do these things, and if I don't write them down, I could forget them.
Right.
So I'll just write them down, and then if I put them on this paper, then I can set them aside.
Yeah.
And focus on prayer.
Yeah. Very good.
We hope for you that this series has been helpful, and that these videos are just helping you discover more about what it means to dive into prayer, and hope you see this as an invitation to take some time and sit in silence. Maybe pause the video now And pause your life right now and spend 3 minutes just praying that prayer. Speak, Lord, for your servants listening. I'm listening, Jesus. I'm listening for you. Speak, Jesus. Speak into my need. Speak into my hurt. Speak into my hope. Speak into my joy. I want to hear from you, Jesus, and I'm open to you. Blessings on you as you continue your journey with prayer with Jesus.